My 33F long-distance date 30M suddenly ended the relationship again. Should I keep the door open for him? After my previous toxic relationship with a covert narcissist, I spent a year without dating to heal myself and reassess my close relationships. I realized how precious it was to have a healthy person in my life who can be loyal and love me genuinely. I met him on Christmas night last year. It was his last night in my city, and I just thought that we would have some nice chats. But it turned out to be one of the best nights in my life ever. He was a medical doctor at entrance level. I was impressed by his honesty, authenticity, intelligence, and dominance. We talked about various topics that night and didn't even worry about time until the restaurant staff reminded us. We spent the night together and had an earth-shattering lovemaking. He was all I ever wished for. We continued to talk after he returned to city. There was so much affection and chemistry between us. He liked me for who I am, validated my feelings, and never used me. He had healed me on so many levels without knowing it. I thought he had secure attachment style. But soon, it became more difficult. The uncertainty of the relationship, the difference in communication style. Work stress, his job is super draining. The helplessness when we couldn't be with each other. One day, he left me waiting for his video call while he fell asleep. I felt like I wasn't cared for and respected, so I told him I needed some days. And when I texted back, he said that he couldn't stand this and wanted to stop. I told him that his feelings for me and my feelings for him did matter and wished him a good life. I tried to cope with the sadness and depression of not having him. I had some trips, met new people, but I couldn't forget him, and the feelings I had for him was very intense, and I didn't want to have a relationship with anyone else. However, I accepted what it was, and I didn't reach out to him at all. I genuinely wished him find a good life partner. I was surprised when he reached out to me almost 2 months later, and I turned him down as I wanted to have a committed relationship instead of a casual thing. After 1 week, I realized it was too difficult for me to be without him and texted him back. I told him that we need to have life compatibility and close the distance in order to maintain a relationship. He said that it was difficult, but he thought possible. I just needed that sentence from him. The text next day is full of affection, and he texted me more regularly than last time. I also learned to focus on my life and stay calm between texts. We mostly had surface checking in message, so I was happy when he shared with me his challenge at work for the first time. We were more open to each other after that, but shortly after that he stopped texting me back and went silent for 3 days. Even he agreed with me that he would send me a heads up if he needed time instead of just disappearing. I didn't reach out to him and waited. Then he came back with a casual, "Hi babe, how are you?" and 2 hours later, a breaking up text and blocked me. He said that he didn't see a future between us and his career just got in the way of knowing me. He believed that I wanted to find someone to settle down permanently soon, and he didn't want to waste my valuable time. He said he was very sorry. I am heartbroken. I knew he needed both companionship and sex. He had strong feelings to me too, but this is too difficult for him. While I was grounded and committed, he was spontaneous and had fear of commitment. I can wait for him, but I see that this long-distance relationship is challenging, and I long for being adored and loved by someone next to me, being able to text anytime I want without having to fear of putting stress on them. But for him, I love him for who he is, and he inspired me a lot. I don't want to lose someone like him. Should I keep the door open for him if he ever comes back? TLDR, I met a decent man once last year. We had an on-off long-distance relationship. He had ended it twice suddenly. Should I keep the door open if he ever comes back? Now for the second story. Why does my 41F partner 46M refuse to give me access to household security cameras? We've been together 8 years, lived together for 6, share a child and a home. We moved to a new house with a yard about 3 years ago, and he loves this house more than anything. He's put security cameras all around the exterior of the home pointing in all directions, and even has one in the garage, and they're motion activated and send the recording to the cloud. At least one of them has the ability to record sound. He's away for work for extended periods of time, 1-3 weeks usually. And recently, after noticing another new camera outside, I mentioned I'd like to also have access to the recordings since I'm home alone with our child, and what if I hear something etc. while he's overseas and I can't see what's going on outside? We live in a safe neighborhood in a small town. To my knowledge, when he talks about it, there's mostly just wildlife caught on these cameras, such as bear, deer, cougars, and neighbors walking their dogs, etc., or someone coming to the door to drop off package. He refuses to give me access and says that it would just complicate things and we'd end up fighting over it or some weird reason. It honestly doesn't make sense to me. He can see my every move via these cameras, and if I had access, I'd feel better about that. But he refuses. We have a front door keypad instead of a typical lock with key. I also learned, about 2 years after moving into our home, that he uses a different door code than me and my daughter. He says there's one main one, the one he uses, and one for everyone else, basically my daughter and I. He can see when the codes have been used each time. There's a log that's kept. My first impressions of both of these scenarios are feelings of distrust and confusion. Maybe I'm sensing that he doesn't trust me and I'm picking up on that. Confusion because who the hell thinks this way? What's going on in his mind? But it stresses me out, and I'd prefer to believe he's just being cautious and protective of the house, not controlling of me. Curious to know how this comes across to others. Now for the third story. My 19F sister 26F is going to marry her boyfriend 27M, who has always said really weird and rude things to me when she's not around. How do I know if she would want to know about it, or would I just be interfering in their relationship? Ever since I met my sister's boyfriend, he'd been a jerk to me. I first met him when they'd been together for a couple of months. When I met him, he raised his eyebrows and said, "You're going to struggle to get a guy, aren't you?" I was quite tall at that time and carried on growing after that, and I had always been quite embarrassed about that. I couldn't believe he had just said that, but I just said that wasn't a concern for me at the moment. He then said, "So you're one of those people then?" I ignored him and left. I was hoping this was just some kind of bad first impression, and he had social issues or something, but those sorts of comments carried on. He'd comment about what I would be wearing, say that he would never let my sister wear something like that in public when I was wearing something short or tighter. When I'd show my sister photos from when I was on holiday with my friends, he'd say that I'd look like I was asking for it, and he just always had some kind of weird comment to make. He was rude about my accent, my sports, my hair, my clothes, my body, everything. But at the same time make weird comments about how I was showing my body, and it would make people think things about me. He never did it in front of my parents or my sister. I avoided him as much as possible, but sometimes it was impossible. My parents always liked him because he's really nice and polite in front of them. But for some reason he just didn't like me, and the feeling was mutual. It felt like he always found something to be rude to me about. I was sure my sister would eventually break up with him because she's far too good for him. He may be technically good looking, but he's not very smart or a nice person. But recently, after being together for 4 years, my sister told my family that they're getting married. I just feel grossed out by the fact my sister might be marrying someone who is so rude, and maybe even having children with him. If they had a daughter, he might act the same way. But I'm worried my sister or her boyfriend will think I'm trying to break them up. I'm not trying to interfere in their relationship, but I also think my sister might want to know, but I don't know. I love my sister, even though she should have chosen a better person to be with. And I don't want her to be marrying someone like this, but I don't know if I'm letting my personal feelings interfere with this as well. I've never been in a relationship, so I'm not exactly the most informed about this sort of topic, and I'm really unsure.